Hey, what's up? This is Jimmy Brown with another string theory column. Picking up where we left off last month, I'd like to continue showing you my little etude composition, Autumn Leaves Counterpoint. And I'm going to show you some more variations upon the initial theme, this time getting denser and more rhythmically complex, subdividing the beat further. As you recall, last time we went through this chord progression to Autumn Leaves, A minor 7, D7, G major 7, C major 7, F sharp minor 7 flat 5, B7, E minor, B7, E minor, E7, and that brings us back to A minor 7. Okay, so I'm going to just recap the variation that we ended with last time and go right into the next variation, which is eighth note triplets. So here we go. 2, 3, 4. Okay, coming out of this big walk-up, and then on the final cadence to E minor, to B7, E minor. Instead of going to the resolving to the root, we're going to go. We just shifted gears to our next rhythmic subdivision, eighth note triplets. I'm playing what's like a G sharp diminished 7 arpeggio. It could also be thought of as F diminished 7, or D diminished 7, or B diminished 7. That gives you that E7 flat 9 sound. So you play over E bass note. Here's E7, E7 flat 9. So you got E minor, B7, E minor. I'm targeting and doing the same thing I was doing previously, going after the third of each chord on the downbeat. That's a very surefire method when improvising or composing to get a very harmonious, pleasing sound, you know. I'm using an A minor 7 arpeggio here. You can hear that, but I'm also adding a passing tone. And then over D7, finger slide. That's kind of like a D9 arpeggio because I'm adding the E here. And then another passing tone, a scale tone. And here how that C note, 7th of D, resolves to B, which is the 3rd of G. And then from there I go. Again, here this little chromatic movement. You have major 7, dominant 7th, the 3rd of C. The key is to learn some harmony, voice leading, how chord tones resolve to the next chord tone, and then you can use that to create melodic lines. And that brings you to C. And again, it's a challenge to try to fill in so much space with so many notes, you know. For C major 7, I did a finger slide again. By the way, the reason I'm using, you look at the tablature and you'll see some of the fingerings may seem a little unusual. That's my personal style. I sometimes like to shift my fret hand to make the picking pattern a little more advantageous or more optimal. So when you cross strings, you're kind of going in the direction you're going. Like instead of going, I could do that, but that's a little arduous. So I went. See, I went up, down, up, down, up, down. Notice every string cross, I'm using that what's called outside the strings picking. Same there. Down, up, down. Notice every time I cross a string, I'm using a stroke that sends me in the direction of the next string. That's a very strategically calculated move. Same thing over C. So that's why I did the finger slide, and instead of going, you could play it like that, yeah, it's easier on the fret hand but it makes life a little harder on the pick hand, so it's kind of a trade-off, right? And then over the F sharp minor 7 flat 5, that's basically an F sharp minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio. The surefire way to describe a chord melodically is to just play the arpeggio. But sometimes you have to add, to fill out the rhythm of what you're doing. I'm doing eighth note triplets, you have to add scale tones. So I'm going. The B is actually the fourth of F sharp minor 7 flat 5. Actually kind of works. And then I'm doing this on the B7 chord, resolving to the third. Again, it's always the third. I mean, I'm doing this on purpose as an instructional thing. You don't have to always target the third, but I'm doing it in this case to prove a point. Okay, so coming out of the C, that's basically the C Lydian mode, by the way, which lives within the G major scale. So. How that resolves to this note, you hear, but by this point you can hear that that's the third of F sharp minor 7 flat 5. And from there, I'm kind of running up the arpeggio with passing tone. Without the B note, you'd have. That's the pure F sharp minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio. Adding the B note is a passing tone. And again, you notice how the picking is optimized. That resolves to B, the third. Again, I'm targeting the third. You don't always have to target the third, but I'm doing this to prove a point that this is a very reliable method to get a real sweet sound. And then here, for the sake of making the picking optimal, I do another little slide. I go. Staying on the E string as long as possible, and then shifting over whenever I can do it on an upstroke. I could have gone, but that would have given me a down and then an up called inside the strings picking, which is difficult, and to me it's always kind of a pain in the neck, so I try to avoid that. And I do that by doing a little bit of a shifting with the fret hand. And then that resolves to the third of E minor, G. I'm staying on one string. Why? Because it's easiest to alternate pick on one string. You have to do a little shift there. And then notice how this kind of suggests or describes this movement. That's the end of that variation. And that leads into our final grand finale variation on the theme, which is 16th notes. So here's that. We'll take it from the last measure of the 8th note triplets, transitioning into the 16th notes. 1, 2, 3, 4.